Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is Blueprint Design and I'm Nikhil. And in this video, we'll talk about how to create a working prototype from your designs in Adobe Xd. And we'll also look at what options we have or what options Adobe Xd provides us to create interactions between artboards so that we can create a working prototype from our designs. As you can see, I'm taking my previous project called Trader Joe's as an example to show you the different examples and different options. And we'll go through each options and see how to create those to basically combine all of those to create an amazing prototype from our designs. If you want to learn more about my process when I created this project, I will add a link to my case study in the description down below so you can go through the research and the design process that I've shared on my website. So let's get started. Let's first see what options we have in Adobe Xd to create different types of interactions or prototypes. We can classify these options in Adobe Xd into two general categories, that is transitional and non-transitional. In transitional, we have different options, that is an interaction which is transitioning from one artboard to another. We can call it the simple interaction. The other one is auto-animate, wherein Adobe Xd actually analyzes the two different screens, which is the source and the destination, and calculates the differences between those two screens or artboards and then animates those differences. The next option is overlay, and with this option you can create the hovering menus or different options as an overlay on the same artboard. So you're not really transitioning to another artboard, you are just placing another artboard on top of this one as an overlay. Scroll to, this means we're actually staying within the same artboard but only navigating to another point within the same artboard. Last option within the transitional category is the previous artboard option, which, as the name suggests, will take you to the previous artboard in your prototype. It will essentially reverse the animation or the interaction that was played when coming to this artboard. The next category is non-transitional, and this includes audio playback and speech playback. I have already made a video on audio playback and I'll add a link to that video down in the description so you can view it to get a deeper understanding of this option. So let's head to Adobe Xd to see all of these interactions in real life. So I'm in Adobe Xd and here I have all the different artboards that I've used in my Trader Joe's case study project. To begin with, we're going to look at the first interaction or the first type of interaction, which is transition. And if you are just starting out, you can see on the top left corner of the screen, you have the design tab wherein you can create certain shapes and the artboards. You have the prototype tab where you can create links between different artboards, and that's how you add prototypes incrementally to eventually make a working prototype. So if I were to show you one option, I will select this option wherein in this case it's basically one of the products on an e-commerce platform. So if I right click, and in Adobe Xd this is made as a component, so I'm going to right click and then select edit main component. So I only have to create an interaction once and it will apply to all of its instances at the same time. And so with this selected, I'm going to actually just remove this. With an item selected, you will see when you come into the prototype tab, you can see that the item is highlighted in blue color, and on the right side you have this arrow indicating you can create an interaction. So I will press and drag from that arrow to essentially create an interaction. And then I can drag that arrowhead and drop it on the destination. And once you drop it on the properties panel on the right here, you can see different options. Some of the options are the trigger. How do you want to trigger this interaction? So in most of my cases, since it is an interactive mobile application, my trigger is going to be a tap. So this interaction is going to be triggered when the user actually taps on this product. We have 3 more options, which is drag, keys and gamepad, and voice. Yes, it's that advanced. So I've already made a video on using keys and gamepad as your triggers. I've also linked that down in the description, so do watch that. So with the tap trigger selected, I'm now going to see the different options for the type of this action. In this case, I'm going to select a transition because I want to go from this artboard where my product sits to the product description page, which is another artboard. So I'm going to select transition, and then the destination is already selected when I dropped my arrowhead for this interaction. But if you want to change it, you can then select one of these options, which is essentially a list of all your artboards. The animation itself is going to be dissolve for me because I'm okay with using dissolve. So when we tap on this product, the screen basically just dissolves from this screen or this artboard to the destination. And there's multiple options for you to choose from according to your needs. So if I were to select slide right, I will then play this, and then if I can just select any of these items, because as I mentioned earlier, all of these items are basically instances of the same component. So the same interaction applies to all of the instances. So if I were to click on this interaction, the next artboard is basically sliding right into view. So that's essentially what slide right means. And as the name suggests over here, slide left, slide up, slide down, and push left. So let's see what push left look like. So if I were to scroll down and then click on this option, you can see that the artboards or the interaction is slightly different than that of slide left. So you can play around with these options when you're working on your designs. But for my case, I am okay with using dissolve. And honestly, in certain cases, I'll be even okay with using no animation. Don't feel obliged to use one of these options. When the case calls for it, it's okay to use none as well. But I'm going to use dissolve for this one. The next option is easing. And I've actually created another video. In fact, my last video was all about easing options. So do check that out as well. It's pretty important. This often dictates how interactive a prototype is, depending on the different options you use for easing. So in this case, I only want the product page to open. So I'm keeping my easing to none. The duration, as the title suggests, is the duration of the animation or the interaction. And I want it to open with the shortest duration. So I'm going to select 0.2. You can select up to 5 seconds of duration in Adobe Xd. And as I was showing the different categories earlier, you can create multiple actions for the same trigger. And from the different categories that we saw, You can only create one interaction from the transitional category. So that is, I have already created a transition, so I cannot combine this with auto animate or overlay or scroll to. I can only use one of these 5 actions at one time, but I can combine these with the non-transitional actions such as audio playback or speech playback. So if I were to design a game, you can imagine that as in when you interact with the game, you may also want to create an audio playback or add some audio feedback in the background. So that's what you can do along with creating these interactions. So let's keep that in mind, and this applies to all the interactions. So that was the simple transition. Let's see that one more time in action. So I'm on my products page. I can then view all of these products, and then when I want to look more at a product, I can simply click, which is tap, when I'm viewing this on a mobile application. So that triggers the animation, and then it's a simple transition onto the destination artboard. And like this, you can add multiple interactions at different places in your artboards, which will then create a flow altogether. So please don't be overwhelmed when you see all of these links and interactions. It is pretty normal to see these many interactions when you're creating a complex design. Moving on to the next one, which is auto-animate. As I mentioned earlier, auto-animate basically looks at the differences between the source artboard and the destination artboard, and then animates those differences. So I can take an example of the onboarding process. My zero state screen, like there's an interaction which actually goes from this artboard to my onboarding artboard. So if I were to let me just go back to my design tab, and then on the layers panel, you can see that I have the Trader Joe's, or the the project logo, and then I have a background, but I also have all of these different items which are basically transparent on this artboard, so you don't see them. But all of these items, which is the destination, they all exist on this artboard as well. I can show you by making them visible. So this is one trick or one advantage that you can take from Adobe Xd's prototyping options. I can show that to you in action first, so it makes sense. When I click anywhere on the screen, I have set that type of an interaction where I can click anywhere on the screen and it will basically create that interaction for me. Having that smooth flow for that interaction, it's possible when you use auto-animate. And as I mentioned, Adobe Xd will only look at the differences between the two artboards and animate those differences. So whatever is present on this artboard, if it's not present here, it will not be animated. It has to be present, but let's say if it was moved around, that will be animated. And I'm taking advantage of that ability to create a smooth flowing interaction. I've actually done the same thing by using auto animate option for the sign in process as well. So look closely over here. The Trader Joe's logo actually just reduces in size and then becomes transparent. But all the other items like the sign in credentials, they become visible and they're moving a bit to the top as well. So if I go back to my artboard, I can actually show you, if I go back to my design tab, that this Trader Joe's logo actually exists here as well, but it's just transparent. And it's moved to the top and I've reduced it in size. So when the interaction plays out, you can see that the logo is going to the top and then the rest of the content is being made visible. If you want to create these smooth flowing interactions, there's some work required, but the end result is worth all of that effort. I hope you understand how auto-animate works. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on my Instagram handle. I'll be happy to help you. Or you can mention your questions down in the comments as well. Moving on to the next option, which is creating overlays. If I zoom in over here, you can see that this is my product screen where there's different categories of products based on the research that I've done. And on the menu bar, we also have certain options. And if you look at the navigation bar, we have the three, like the hamburger icon, which opens up this menu as well. So this menu is essentially an overlay because I'm going to use it in multiple places. So I've designed it in a way which actually, when the interaction plays out, let's see that in action. So when I click on when I tap on the hamburger icon, the menu options actually shows up on top of the current artboard. And when I press or close this, it actually goes back to wherever we were previously. So if I go to the account tab, I can even trigger that interaction from here. And when I close this overlay, it will take me back to wherever I was. So in this interaction or this example, I actually showed you two examples. One of them was obviously the overlay action. So I'm right now in the prototype tab, and you can see that this, when I select the hamburger icon, I have already created this interaction, and the overlay interaction is actually indicated by a dashed line, and there's some space. You can see these green lines and the plus icon. So if you have something, actually, you know what? I can reduce the size of this content just for this example. Whenever you want to create an artboard for the overlay, make sure that the artboard color is without any fill. It has to be transparent, and also make sure the size of the artboard is not the size of your mobile or whatever the device that you're using. It's actually the size of the contents of the overlay. So I've actually tweaked it a bit, but if I were to go back to my prototype tab, you can see that with the green options over here, you can move those around as well, depending on where you want to show those overlay options. I hope this makes sense. If you had fewer options over here, you would be able to move these around exactly where you want them to show up. And this is, I think I learned the hard way, and I just learned that recently. So I'm sure this will be even more advantageous for you when you work on your designs. Let me just undo all my changes. So if I were to play this, hamburger menu pops out, and for our next example, when I tap on the cross icon, it actually takes me back to my previous artboard. And that's essentially our next example, which is previous artboard option. So you can see that I've added an interaction to this icon with the action type as the previous artboard. And with this option, you don't really have any customizations because, as I mentioned earlier, this reverses the previous interaction to go back to the original artboard, wherever it came from. Moving on to our next example, we're going to see how the scroll to interaction works. And honestly, I have not added the scroll to, or I have not taken advantage of the scroll to interaction in this project. But if I were to use, let's say the search bar as an example, when I tap on search, let's say I'm looking for groceries or flowers, right? So what scroll to interaction does is basically it takes you to a section on the same artboard. It does not take you away from this artboard to another one. You can use that to basically go to any content within the same artboard. So let's say I tap on the search bar and I search for groceries and flowers. I can then create an interaction, and I just need to drag and drop that onto any section that I want to use as an destination. So I want to scroll down to grocery and flowers. Adobe is smart enough to understand that when you stay in the same artboard, it automatically selects that interaction to scroll to and the destination as grocery and flowers. The other options are the same with easing and duration, but you have one more option, which is the Y offset. And to demonstrate this Y offset, let us just play this interaction first, and then we'll quickly notice what's going on. So when I tap on the search icon, I'm taken to grocery and flowers, but you don't really see that title or the heading of this section, grocery and flowers, because I have iPhone status bar up on the top and the menu bar over here as well. So the title of the section is actually hidden behind these two groups. And if you are using anything like this in your designs, you can take advantage of the Y offset option. So if I actually go to the design tab real quick, I can then see the height as 132 and the height of my menu bar up top as 200. So the total height is 332. So what I'm going to do is, for going back to the prototype, I'm going to offset this interaction and I'm going to give that number 132 plus 200, which is 332. So now when I tap on the search bar, yeah, I actually should have given minus 132. So let me just go back. So you can see that when you give a Y offset, you see this icon, added icon over here, which is the scroll action will only stop up to this point, and whatever this value is essentially is going to the top of the artboard. Hope that makes sense. Let's see that in action again over here. So again, I'm clicking on the or tapping on the search bar. I see my grocery and flowers section over here because of that Y offset option. And this is really an important thing if you are using any content or any group of layers over here and you are fixing the position when scrolling. You can take advantage of the Y offset. Our last option is speech playback. And so again, even with speech playback, I did not take advantage of that option in this project, but just to show you as an example, we'll take the same interaction and I am going to add or combine two different interactions together, as I mentioned. So if one of or the main interaction is a transitional interaction, which is basically one of these top 5, I cannot combine these top 5, any of those top 5 with, again, any of those top 5, I can only use those once per interaction, but I can combine those with non-transitional interactions, which is audio playback and speech playback. So you can watch my previous video on audio playback. So I'm not going to use that over here. But for speech playback, you have two options. The first option is what voice you want to use, and you have like quite a few options over here, and some of them are female voices, some of them are male voices. So you can create, you can actually select any of these depending on your liking. And what speech playback does is basically you type something, Adobe is going to say those words out in this case, Joey's voice. I don't know who Joey is, but let's go with that. So since this interaction or this example is the search one, let's say I'm searching groceries. So the expected output should be the scroll to action, and it should take me to this section, and it should also say searching groceries. So let's see this in action.
Searching groceries.
So there you have it. We get the scroll playback and also the speech playback with this output. And that's how you can use speech playback in your designs. So we have now covered all the interaction options available in Adobe Xd for us to design and create beautiful experiences for our users. And once you create your flows for the prototypes, don't be overwhelmed to see these many uh, interactions or wires in your designs. Uh, I think my recommendation would be to focus on the user experience rather than the number of wires. And I am sure that you will be able to take advantage of these options and create beautiful prototypes from your designs. So if you like this video, please show some love and hit the like button. Share this video with your network so more people can understand all these interaction options at a deeper level and take advantage of these. And also consider subscribing, as I'm going to be sharing more such videos in the future. Thank you so much for watching.